The Las Vegas skyline burns bright against the midnight sky. Neon lights flashing, reflecting off the sleek black sports cars that line the strip. The air is thick with excess, money, and bad decisions. Inside Luxor Lounge, a high-end, dimly lit bar, Ethan Blackwood leans against the polished marble counter, fingers lazily swirling the amber liquid in his glass. He's dressed in a custom-tailored black suit, but the top buttons of his shirt are undone, his tie loosened. He looks like a man who has it all, because he does. But tonight, he's just looking for a distraction. Across the room, a woman walks in. She doesn't belong here, or maybe she belongs more than anyone else. Scarlett Monroe, wavy, dark auburn hair, a figure that turns heads without trying, and eyes that hold secrets. She's not one of those girls vying for attention. She doesn't need to. She slides into a seat at the bar, orders a whiskey, neat. Ethan watches, intrigued. He's met countless beautiful women. None of them felt like a threat. She does. He smirks, lifting his drink, making his way toward her. Alexander, casual, smooth. Didn't take you for a whiskey girl. Scarlett doesn't even turn to him. Just takes a slow sip. Scarlett. And I didn't take you for a man who states the obvious. Ethan chuckles, amused. She finally looks at him. Something shifts. For the first time in years, he feels it. That pull. That instant, electric, dangerous connection. Ethan slides into the seat beside her. Alexander. All right, I'll play along. What do you take me for? Scarlett sets her drink down, turns fully to him, Scarlett. A man who's got too much money, too much power, and absolutely no idea what to do with either. A beat. Ethan laughs. Not a polite laugh. A real one, Alexander. All right, Miss Mystery, let's make this interesting. Scarlett raises an eyebrow, intrigued. Scarlett, go on. Alexander, let's play a game. One question each. No lies, no bullshit. Scarlett smirks, lifting her glass. Scarlett, deal. She takes a sip. Scarlett, first question. Why is a billionaire sitting in a Vegas bar alone? Ethan leans back, smirks. Alexander, because money gets boring when you have too much of it. Her eyes flicker, like she understands. Scarlett, fair enough? His turn. Alexander, why does a woman like you look like she's running from something? For the first time, she falters. It's subtle, just a flicker of emotion. But he catches it. She quickly smirks, covering it up. Scarlett, maybe I just like the thrill of disappearing. A long silence. Then, he leans in. Closer, Alexander. What if you didn't have to disappear tonight? Scarlett tilts her head. Her fingers tap against her glass. Scarlett. What are you suggesting, Blackwood? His smirk deepens. Alexander. Something reckless. Scarlett exhales a small laugh, shaking her head. Scarlett, you have no idea what reckless means. Alexander, then show me. A charged silence. Something about this moment. The fire between them, the danger, the inevitability, feels unstoppable. Scarlett downs the rest of her drink. All right, let's be reckless. Cut to int private chapel. Later that night, the fluorescent glow of a Vegas wedding chapel flickers overhead. The place is empty except for them and the officiant. Scarlett stands in a sleek, backless dress, holding a plastic bouquet. Ethan smirks, buttoning his cufflinks like he's closing $1 million deal. The officiant clears his throat. Officiant, this is, a legally binding marriage. Are you sure about this? Ethan looks at Scarlett. Scarlett meets his gaze. Neither of them flinch. Scarlett. Why not? Ethan grins. Alexander. Why the hell not? They sign the papers. The officiant pronounces them husband and wife. Ethan grabs Scarlett, kisses her. It's not soft. Not gentle. It's reckless, raw, insane, and neither of them regret it. Yet. Cut to int. Luxury hotel suite. Morning. The sunlight streams in through floor-to-ceiling windows. Ethan groans, rubbing his temple, still half asleep. His head is pounding. The room smells of expensive champagne and bad decisions. Then, he feels it. The empty space beside him. His eyes snap open. The other side of the bed is cold. Empty. The wedding ring still sits on his finger. The marriage certificate is on the nightstand. But Scarlett Monroe? Gone. No note. No explanation. Just vanished. Ethan sits up, running a hand through his hair, heart pounding. A flicker of something he doesn't recognize churns in his chest. And then, his phone buzzes. A blocked number. Ethan frowns. Answers. A deep, unfamiliar voice speaks. Voice. On phone. Congratulations, Mr. Blackwood. You just married a woman who doesn't exist. The room is too bright. Sunlight pours through the massive floor-to-ceiling windows, reflecting off the expensive furniture, the untouched champagne bottle on the coffee table, the discarded tuxedo jacket on the floor. Ethan Blackwood groans, rubbing his temple as he sits up in bed. His head is pounding, the taste of whiskey still on his tongue. Something feels off. He blinks, trying to shake off the haze of last night. Then, it hits him. The marriage certificate on the nightstand, the gold wedding band still wrapped around his finger. He exhales, half smirking. Alexander, muttering, amused. Well, that happened. He turns toward the other side of the bed. Empty. The sheets are cold. His smirk fades. His eyes scan the room. No heels on the floor. No dress thrown over a chair. No Scarlett. A flicker of something he doesn't recognize tightens in his chest. He pushes back the sheets, swinging his legs off the bed. Stands. Alexander, calling out, casual but searching. Scarlett? Silence. The room feels hollow. Ethan walks to the bathroom. The door is slightly ajar. He nudges it open, empty. He checks the closet. Nothing. The minibar? Untouched. The only proof she was ever here? The lipstick stain on his whiskey glass. A slow, uneasy exhale. She didn't just leave, she vanished. And for some reason, his instincts scream that something is very, very wrong. Cut to int. Hotel lobby, morning. Ethan steps out of the elevator, suit disheveled but controlled. His usual confidence is there, but beneath it, his mind is working fast. He approaches the concierge desk. Alexander, calm, unreadable. I need information about my wife. The concierge, Jason, mid-50s, polished, experienced, looks up. Jason, polite, professional. Of course, sir. What's her name? Alexander, Scarlett Monroe. Jason types on the computer. His expression doesn't change. A few beats of silence. Then, he frowns. Jason, I'm sorry, sir. There's no guest under that name. Ethan's stomach tightens. He leans in slightly, voice low. Alexander, check again. Jason nods, types faster. A long pause. Finally, Jason looks up, slightly uneasy. Jason, no records, sir. No credit card transactions, no room key assigned, no Scarlett Monroe checked in or out of this hotel. A slow, cold realization creeps in. Ethan narrows his eyes. Alexander, controlled but sharp. That's impossible. She was here, with me. Jason glances at the security team nearby, unsure if this is a situation. Jason, I assure you, Mr. Blackwood, there's no record of your wife ever being here. Ethan stares at him. The words echo in his head. There's no record of your wife ever being here. For the first time in his life, he feels the ground shift beneath him. Because this isn't just a one-night stand disappearing. This isn't just someone skipping town. This is something else. And for the first time, Ethan Blackwood has no idea what the hell he just got himself into. Cut 2, int, private security office. Minutes later, Ethan stands behind the security desk, arms crossed, watching the grainy hotel footage play on a monitor. He leans in, eyes locked on last night's feed. The video shows him entering the hotel, arm wrapped around Scarlett. They're laughing, pulling each other closer. But then, a few hours later, Scarlett leaves, alone. She steps into the elevator. The doors close. And then, the footage glitches. A second later, it jumps forward 5 minutes. The elevator doors open. She's gone. No trace of her leaving. No camera footage of her walking through the lobby. No records of her checking out, like she was never there at all. A slow chill creeps up Ethan's spine. He turns to the security officer. Alexander, low, unreadable. That footage was edited. The officer shifts uncomfortably. Security guard. I don't know what to tell you, sir. There's no missing timestamp. Ethan exhales slowly. Someone doesn't want him finding her. And now, he's making it his mission to do exactly that. Cut to Inti. Ethan's hotel suite night. Ethan sits at the edge of the bed, phone pressed to his ear. The call connects. A smooth, professional voice answers. Julian, V.O., calm, calculating. Mr. Blackwood, didn't expect a call from you at this hour. Ethan leans forward, fingers clasped. Alexander, low, sharp. I need you to find someone. A pause. Julian, V.O. I assume this isn't a business request? Ethan's jaw tightens. Alexander, she's my wife. Silence on the other end. Then, Julian exhales, amused. Julian, V.O. Well, that's a first. Ethan doesn't react. Alexander. Her name is Scarlett Monroe, except it isn't. Julian is silent, processing. Then, a slight shift in his tone. Julian, V.O. Understood. I'll start with standard background checks. Ethan shakes his head. Alexander. No. This is bigger. Check the deep files. Black market IDs. Offshore accounts. A beat. Julian pauses. Julian, V.O. Are you saying your wife doesn't exist? Ethan leans back. His fingers tap against the armrest. A slow, sharp exhale. Alexander, muttering to himself. That's what I'm afraid of. The city is alive, but inside the penthouse suite of the Valencia Hotel, there is only silence. Ethan Blackwood stands by the floor-to-ceiling windows, whiskey in one hand, phone in the other. His gaze is locked onto the city below, but his mind is trapped in the last 24 hours. A wife who vanished. A marriage certificate that felt more like a contract with a ghost. A hotel security system that had been wiped clean. He exhales slowly, jaw tight. Then, the door clicks open. Julian Pierce, a private investigator, ex-FBI, cold as ice, walks in, dropping a file onto the coffee table. Ethan turns, raises an eyebrow. Alexander, low, unreadable. That was fast. Julian shrugs, settling into the leather armchair across from him. Julian, you pay me enough to be fast. Ethan picks up the file, flipping it open. And then, his stomach tightens. Blank. The entire document is a dead end. No driver's license, no official residency, no social security number that actually exists. Scarlett Monroe doesn't exist. Ethan slowly closes the file, looks at Julian. Alexander, low, sharp. You're telling me she's a ghost. Julian leans back, crossing one ankle over his knee. Julian, calm but serious. I'm telling you, someone went through a hell of a lot of trouble to make sure no one finds her. A long, heavy pause. Ethan exhales, rubbing his temple. Then, Julian pulls out another file. Julian. But I found something else. He slides a photo across the table. Ethan picks it up, studies it. The airport security footage. And right there, Scarlett. She's walking through a private terminal, alone. No luggage, no hesitation. Ethan's jaw tightens. Alexander, where was this taken? Julian, McCarran International, private jet hangars. Ethan's fingers tighten around the photo. Alexander. Where was she going? Julian leans forward, resting his elbows on his knees. Julian, low, knowing. Paris. A slow exhale. Ethan sets the photo down. Mind racing. Paris. She didn't just leave the city. She left the damn country. Ethan reaches for his phone. Alexander, I want the flight details. The jet owner, every single... Then Julian stops him. A sharp, controlled movement. Ethan's eyes narrow. Julian, dead serious. Don't! Move! A slow beat of silence. Then, Julian slides his phone across the table. Ethan picks it up, presses play. A distorted voice fills the room. Voice, on recording. Tell Blackwood to stop looking. Ethan's grip tightens on the phone. Voice, on recording. He's digging in the wrong places, and if he keeps pushing, we push back. The recording ends. Silence. Ethan's pulse beats slow, steady, controlled. Then, he sets the phone down. A slow, sharp smirk curves his lips. Alexander, low, dangerous. Is that a threat? Julian exhales sharply, shaking his head. Julian, it's a warning. And trust me, whoever sent this, they don't give second ones. Ethan leans back, rubbing his chin. Thinking, calculating. A woman who doesn't exist. A disappearance too clean. A message meant to scare him off. A few hours ago, he might have walked away. Now he's in. He grabs his jacket, phone, and keys. Julian watches him, shaking his head. Julian, knowing, exasperated. You're going after her. Ethan smirks, heading for the door. Alexander, low, final. Paris is nice this time of year. Cut to into private jet, night. Ethan sits in the plush leather seat, staring out the window. The jet is silent except for the hum of the engines. He twirls the wedding band still on his finger. And for the first time since this started, he wonders, who the hell did he marry? And more importantly, why is she running? The soft hum of the engines fills the cabin, but Ethan Blackwood isn't hearing it. He sits in the plush leather seat, swirling a glass of whiskey, staring out at the endless stretch of black sky. His mind is still on the woman who disappeared. Scarlett Monroe, or whatever her real name is. His instincts tell him he should be angry, betrayed. Instead, he feels something else, something he doesn't like. Intrigue. The screen on the wall flashes to life. Pilot VO. Mr. Blackwood, we'll be landing in Paris in 20 minutes. Ethan doesn't respond. He downs the rest of his drink, jaw tight. He came to find her. Now? He wants answers. Cut to Inti. Luxury hotel suite. Paris night. The penthouse suite is bathed in city lights, the Eiffel Tower visible in the distance. Ethan stands by the bar, pouring himself another drink, exhaustion weighing on him, but his mind still sharp. Then, a knock at the door. His muscles tense. No one should know he's here. Ethan walks to the door, silent, controlled. He flicks the security feed on his phone. 3 men, suited, armed, dangerous. And the man standing in front of them? Roman DeLuca. Ethan exhales slowly. DeLuca is more than a name. He's a power move. A European underworld figure with influence in places that never make the news. If he's here, it's not a coincidence. Ethan adjusts his cufflinks, then opens the door. Roman walks in first, unbothered, owning the room like he paid for it. His men stay at the door, watching, armed. Ethan leans against the bar, unfazed. Alexander, casual, unreadable. To what do I owe the pleasure? Roman chuckles. He's tall, Mediterranean features, sharp, dark eyes that never show fear. He takes a seat on the leather couch, tapping a cigarette against a gold case. Roman, cool, calm. You're a hard man to find, Blackwood. Ethan smirks. Alexander. Funny. I was just about to say the same thing. Roman lights the cigarette, exhales slowly. Then he looks up, and everything shifts. His voice? Lower, colder. Roman, you married a woman who doesn't exist. Ethan's grip tightens around his glass, but his expression? Unshaken. Roman watches him, studying, amused. Roman, soft, amused. You don't scare easy, do you? Ethan tilts his head slightly. Alexander. I don't scare at all. Roman smirks, nodding slightly. Respect. Then he leans forward. Roman, low, serious. Then listen carefully, because this is your only warning. The air goes sharp. Roman taps his cigarette on the ashtray, flicks his wrist. One of his men steps forward, drops a file onto the coffee table. Ethan glances at it, then back to Roman. Alexander, calm, measured. You always come bearing gifts? Roman chuckles. Roman, open it. A pause. Then Ethan does, and what he sees? His stomach tightens. Inside the file, photo after photo, Scarlett, in different cities, different countries, different identities. Surveillance shots from New York, London, Dubai. Some of them, years old, and the most recent one, taken last night. At a private estate outside Paris, a slow, sharp exhale. Ethan looks up. Roman's expression is unreadable. Roman, low, calm, but absolute. Your wife? She's not who you think she is. Ethan leans back, reaches for his drink, takes a sip, doesn't react. But inside, everything shifts. Roman watches him carefully, waiting. Then, he nods slightly to his men. They step forward. The air thickens. One of them leans in close to Ethan, voice low. Henchman, dangerous, final. Walk away. Now while you still can. Ethan's grip tightens around his glass. A long pause. Then, he smirks. Alexander, low, amused, unfazed. You just threatened a billionaire in his own suite. That takes balls. The henchman doesn't move. Neither does Ethan. Then, Roman exhales, standing. Roman, chuckling, shaking his head. I like you, Blackwood. I really do. He flicks his cigarette into the ashtray, adjusting his suit. Then, his expression darkens. Roman, cold, final. But I don't repeat myself. He steps closer. Too close. The air turns sharp as a knife. Roman leans in slightly. Roman, a whisper, deadly quiet. If you keep looking for her, you won't make it out of this alive. A long, suffocating silence. Then, he steps back, fixes his cufflinks, nods to his men, and just like that, he's gone. The door clicks shut. And Ethan? He lets out a slow breath, setting his glass down. His fingers? Slightly tight around the rim. Because for the first time, he knows what this is. This isn't about a runaway wife. This isn't about a marriage gone wrong. This is a game of power, of shadows, of dangerous men, and even more dangerous secrets. And now, he's in the middle of it. A slow, knowing smirk curves his lips. Because they think they can scare him off. They think he's like the others. But they're wrong. Because Ethan Blackwood? The Parisian rain hits the cobblestone streets, glistening under the golden glow of the streetlights. The city is alive. But in this moment, everything else fades. Ethan Blackwood moves through the dimly lit alley, his steps calculated, unrelenting, because he finally found her. Scarlett Monroe, or whatever her real name is, and she's running again. She disappears into a narrow street, her coat pulled tight, the hood covering most of her face. But Ethan is faster. Cut to XT Backstreet, night. Scarlett's heels click sharply against the pavement as she weaves through the streets. She doesn't look back, because she already knows he's there. She makes a sharp turn into an empty courtyard. And suddenly, a hand wraps around her wrist. She's pulled back, hard, spun around. She stumbles, right into Ethan's chest. His grip tightens, his jaw clenched, eyes burning. Scarlett breathes heavily, eyes darting around, looking for a way out. Alexander, low, sharp, unshaken. Go ahead, run again. See how far you get this time. Her pulse pounds against his fingers, but she doesn't fight. Instead, she meets his gaze. And this time, she looks tired, defeated, trapped. A long silence. Then, she exhales, and her shoulders drop. She stops fighting it. Scarlett, soft, resigned. You shouldn't be here, Ethan. His jaw tightens. Alexander. That's funny, because I was thinking the same thing about you. She pulls back slightly. And this time? He lets her go, but he doesn't move. Neither of them do. The rain continues to fall, soaking into her coat, into his shirt, into the space between them. Then, Ethan speaks. Alexander, low, steady, but firm. Who the hell are you? A beat. Scarlett exhales, running a hand through her damp hair. Then, she finally looks at him. Scarlett, soft, raw, but unflinching. My name isn't Scarlett Monroe. A slow inhale. Her voice doesn't shake. Scarlett. It's Isabella Laurent. Ethan's entire body goes still. The name hits him like a bullet, because he knows it. Everyone does. Laurent, as in the Laurent dynasty, as in the billion-dollar empire built on power, politics, and scandal, as in the heiress who disappeared 5 years ago. A slow, sharp exhale. Ethan's hands curl into fists at his sides. He studies her, really studies her. And now? It all makes sense. The way she walked into a room like she owned it. The way she handled herself like someone who had been raised around power. The way she always looked like she was waiting for the other shoe to drop. Because she was never some runaway. She was the lost princess of an empire. A long silence. Then, Ethan exhales, shaking his head. Alexander, low, dark, slightly amused. You've got to be kidding me. Scarlett, Isabella, smirks, but there's no humor in it. Isabella, soft, resigned. Welcome to the real game, Blackwood. Another silence. Ethan exhales slowly. He should be furious. He should walk away, but he won't, because now he has more questions than ever, and she's the only one who can answer them. Doesn't back down. XT Paris, luxury apartment balcony, night, the Eiffel Tower glows in the distance, lights reflecting off the rain-slicked streets. The city hums below, alive, unaware of the storm brewing above. Inside the penthouse, Ethan Blackwood stands near the window, whiskey in hand, mind racing. He has spent years controlling the world around him, but tonight, he's lost control. Behind him, Isabella Laurent stands near the couch, arms crossed. The weight of her real identity still hangs in the air. She's not just a woman who disappeared. She's the missing heiress of the Laurent dynasty, and now she's hunted. A long, heavy silence. Then Ethan turns. Alexander, low, sharp, controlled. You lied to me. Isabella exhales slowly. She doesn't flinch. Isabella, calm, steady. I didn't have a choice. His grip on the glass tightens. Alexander. That's the thing, Isabella. There's always a choice. She looks away, because she knows he's right. Another pause. Then Ethan moves closer, his voice lower now. Dangerous. Alexander. And now, because of you, I have a target on my back. Isabella's jaw tightens. Isabella. I never asked you to follow me. Ethan exhales, chuckling darkly. Alexander. Number. You just left me with more questions than answers and expected me to forget. She finally looks at him, and for the first time, there's something in her eyes, something raw, unspoken. Ethan steps even closer. Alexander, low, deadly calm. Who's coming for you? She hesitates, a flicker of fear, and that's when he knows. This is bigger than just a missing heiress. Then, a sharp knock at the door. Both of them freeze, a long, heavy silence. Then, another knock. Harder. Ethan's instincts scream. He moves toward the security feed, checks the camera, and what he sees? His stomach turns to ice. 4 men in dark suits, armed, waiting. Isabella sees the screen. Her breath catches. Isabella, low, shaking her head. No, it's too soon. Ethan looks at her, his voice calm but razor-sharp. Alexander. You knew this was coming. She doesn't answer. Because she doesn't have to. Ethan sets down his glass. His entire posture shifts. He's not a CEO right now. He's a man preparing for war. Alexander, low, firm. Get behind me. Isabella hesitates. Isabella, soft, shaking her head. They're not here for you, Ethan. His jaw tightens. Alexander. Yeah? Well, too bad. Because now they are. A beat. Then, the door handle moves. Ethan pulls his gun. The door bursts open. Gunfire erupts. Ethan grabs Isabella, pulling her down behind the bar. A bullet shatters the liquor bottles above them. Glass rains down. Isabella, breathless, frantic. Ethan, we have to… Alexander, sharp, commanding. Not now! He peeks out, fires back. One of the men drops. Another one moves in, silent, professional, lethal. Ethan shifts, takes another shot, misses. Isabella grabs his wrist, her voice urgent, desperate. Isabella, we can't fight them all. We have to go, now! A long pause. Then, Ethan exhales sharply. He grabs her hand, and they run. Cut to int, emergency stairwell, night. The stairs echo with their footsteps, fast, relentless. Ethan glances over his shoulder. The men are still coming. Isabella, breathless, tense. They won't stop, Ethan. Alexander, gritted teeth steady. Yeah, well, neither will I. They reach the garage exit. A black car is waiting. Ethan shoves Isabella inside, jumps in after her. Alexander, to driver, sharp, commanding. Drive, now! The car peels out, tires screeching against wet pavement. Through the rearview mirror, Ethan sees the men running out, weapons drawn. But they're too late. For now. Cut to int, moving car. Night. Ethan's chest rises and falls heavily. He turns to Isabella, his voice low, dangerous. Alexander, you're going to tell me everything, right now. She looks at him. A long pause, then she exhales, her voice soft, unshaken, final. Isabella, they won't stop until I'm dead. Silence. Ethan watches her, and for the first time he sees it. She's not just running, she's hunted, trapped, marked for death. And now, so is he. The rain pounds against the car windows, streaking down in blurred lines as the vehicle speeds through the darkened back roads of rural France. Inside, Ethan Blackwood grips the steering wheel, knuckles white, jaw tight. In the passenger seat, Isabella Laurent sits silently, her arms crossed, gaze locked out the window. Neither of them speak. The tension between them is thick, suffocating. Their clothes are still damp from the rain. Ethan's shirt is stained with blood, not his. The gun rests on the center console, a silent reminder of what just happened. Finally, Ethan exhales sharply, his voice low, cutting through the silence. You want to tell me why the hell men with military-grade weapons just stormed my suite looking for you? Isabella doesn't flinch, doesn't react. Instead, she turns her head slightly, expression unreadable. I told you to walk away, Ethan. Ethan lets out a dark laugh. Yeah? You also told me your name was Scarlett Monroe. She doesn't look away, but her jaw tightens slightly. He notices. And that? It only pisses him off more. Who else is after you? He presses, eyes flicking toward her before returning to the road. Nothing. Her silence is infuriating. Ethan's fingers tighten on the wheel. You think I don't deserve answers? I took a bullet for you back there, Isabella. Finally, she speaks. I didn't ask you to. The words hit harder than they should. Ethan exhales sharply, shaking his head. You really don't give a damn about anyone but yourself, do you? Isabella stays quiet for a moment, then finally turns to him. Her voice is low, controlled. You think this is about not caring? Ethan, if I tell you the truth, you don't walk away from this. Ever. Ethan's grip loosens slightly, and there it is, that flicker of something real in her voice. Not arrogance, not defiance, fear, not for herself, for him. His chest tightens, but he masks it with another sharp laugh. Too late for that, sweetheart. You already dragged me into your mess. The car hits a sharp turn, tires screeching against wet pavement. Ethan doesn't slow down. Neither does the pounding in his chest. Finally, he spots an abandoned roadside inn, its neon sign barely flickering in the distance. Perfect. He pulls into the overgrown driveway, killing the engine. The silence inside the car is loud. Isabella doesn't move. Ethan rubs a hand over his face, exhales hard, then turns to her. His voice is lower now, calmer, but no less demanding. I need to know what I'm up against. She still doesn't move, just watches him. Then finally, she opens the door, stepping out into the cold rain. Ethan curses under his breath. Unbelievable! He grabs his gun, tucks it into the waistband of his jeans, then follows her. Inside, the inn is dark, abandoned for what looks like years. The wooden floor creaks beneath their steps. Isabella moves through the space like she's done this before, like she knows how to hide. Ethan locks the door behind them, watching her carefully. How long have you been running? She pulls off her damp coat, draping it over a chair. Long enough to know it never ends. Ethan watches her, studies the way her shoulders tense as she speaks. Finally, he moves closer. You don't have to do this alone. She exhales, shaking her head. You don't get it, Ethan. Everyone who tries to help me, they end up dead. His jaw tightens. And what? You think pushing me away will stop that? She finally looks at him, and for the first time since this all started, she looks exhausted. Not just physically, emotionally. You're the only person who ever made me feel safe, she says softly, and that scares me more than the people trying to kill me. Ethan's chest tightens, because he knows exactly what she means. The problem? He's not walking away. Not now. Not ever. Instead of answering, he steps closer. The air between them thickens. His voice is low, steady. You need to start trusting me, Isabella. A long, heavy pause. Then she exhales, looks away, and finally, she nods. It's small, barely there, but it's a start. And for now, that's enough. The morning sun barely peeks through the cracked blinds of the abandoned inn. The air is thick with unspoken tension. Ethan Blackwood sits on the edge of the rickety bed, a burning phone clutched in his hand. His jaw is tight, his eyes dark. Across the room, Isabella Laurent watches him carefully. She knows something is wrong. She just doesn't know how bad it is. Ethan finally exhales, running a hand through his hair. He looks at her. You want to tell me why my board just called an emergency meeting to strip me of my own company? Isabella freezes. Her expression is unreadable. But Ethan? He sees the shift in her eyes, the flicker of guilt. His chest tightens. His voice is lower now, sharper. Isabella, what the hell did you do? She swallows. Then, she exhales, stepping closer. Ethan, I can explain. Then start talking, he snaps. A long silence. Finally, she speaks. Your company was leveraged. His stomach drops. What? Isabella rubs her temples, trying to find the words. The Laurent family, my family, had offshore investments tied to your empire. Quiet investments. Hidden under different names. Ethan shakes his head. That's impossible. My financial team would have caught it. She lets out a hollow laugh. You don't think people like my father knew how to cover their tracks? His blood runs cold. Keep going, he orders. Isabella looks away. When I disappeared, those assets froze. But the second our marriage became public, she finally meets his gaze. They unfroze. Ethan's fingers curl into a fist. You're telling me that because I married you, my entire company became a pawn in some underground dynasty war? She doesn't answer. She doesn't have to. His chest rises and falls. Anger, betrayal. You knew, he says, voice low. Her lips part slightly. Ethan, you knew the second I married you, my empire would be tied to yours. His voice is dangerous now. Did you use me? Her eyes flicker with something deep, something broken. Ethan, I never... Tell me the truth, he interrupts. Silence. A long, unbearable silence. Then, finally, she speaks. It wasn't supposed to happen this way. His breath catches. It's not a denial, not a lie. Just a confirmation of the worst thing he could have imagined. His chest tightens. His voice is lower now, colder. Get out. She flinches. Ethan, I said get out. She exhales sharply, backing toward the door. Her hands tremble, but she doesn't try to argue, because she knows. This time, she really lost him. The door clicks shut behind her. And Ethan? Ethan closes his eyes, his world shattering around him. The night is silent, but Ethan Blackwood's mind is anything but. He sits alone in the darkened penthouse of a Paris high-rise, whiskey in hand, eyes locked on the city below. His empire, his legacy, is crumbling. And it all leads back to her. The woman who wasn't Scarlett Monroe. The woman who wasn't just a runaway bride, but a Laurent. Behind him, the faint sound of the elevator chime. He doesn't turn, doesn't have to. He already knows. They're here. A slow click of polished shoes against marble. Then, a voice. Smooth, confident, dangerous. Mr. Blackwood, you've made quite a mess for yourself. Ethan exhales, setting his glass down, finally turning. 3 men stand in his suite. At the center, Vincent Moreau, a man known in whispers and shadows, a man who's made entire empires disappear overnight. And right now, Ethan is his next project. Ethan leans back against the bar, arms crossed. You always make house calls this late? Vincent smirks, unbothered. When the situation calls for urgency, yes. One of his men steps forward. A sleek folder lands on the table. Ethan doesn't touch it. He just watches, waiting, calculating. Vincent takes a slow step forward. You married into something complicated, Mr. Blackwood. Ethan chuckles, dark and sharp. Yeah, I figured that out right around the time people started shooting at me. Vincent tilts his head slightly. It's a shame, really. You had everything. Power, control, stability. His eyes darken slightly. And now, you have a war. Ethan's jaw tightens. He doesn't blink, doesn't flinch. Let's cut to the part where you tell me what you really want. Vincent exhales, almost amused. Fine. He nods to his man. The folder flips open. Inside, documents, contracts, legal transfers. Ethan scans them. Then, his stomach tightens. Vincent watches him. You sign those and your company remains intact. No hostile takeovers, no boardroom coups. Your empire stays yours. Ethan lifts his gaze slowly. Let me guess. There's a catch. Vincent's smirk deepens. Just one. A slow pause. Then, Vincent leans in. Hand her over. The words hang in the air like poison. Vincent steps back, adjusting his cuffs. We'll take care of her. We both know she can't run forever. Ethan stares at him. For the first time in his life, he doesn't know which move to make. His mind is screaming logic. Scarlet Isabella lied. She used him. She made his empire vulnerable. He owes her nothing. And yet, his chest tightens. Because underneath the lies, she was real. The woman who let her guard down for just a second. The woman who told him she'd never had a safe place to land. The woman who, despite it all, he wasn't ready to lose. Vincent watches him closely. You're a businessman, Blackwood. You make difficult choices every day. This is just another one. A long silence. Ethan's hands curl into fists at his sides. Then, he exhales sharply. And for the first time, he doesn't have an answer. The night air is thick with tension, the kind that weighs heavy, suffocating. Ethan Blackwood stands by the open window of an abandoned chateau on the outskirts of Paris. The wind carries the distant hum of the city, but here there is only silence. Behind him, Isabella Laurent loads a gun, her movements precise, unshaken. She isn't running this time. She's done running. Ethan turns, eyes locked on her. You don't have to do this, he says, voice low, steady. Isabella glances up, and for the first time she smirks. I was about to say the same thing to you. A flicker of amusement flashes in his gaze, but it's brief, because they both know what's coming. A war. A moment later, the lights in the distance cut out. Ethan tenses. They're here. A slow inhale. Then, the first gunshot shatters the silence. Cut to into chateau, main hall. Night, the doors burst open. Armed men flood in. The first wave moves fast, tactical. But Ethan and Isabella? They're faster. Ethan fires first, taking down two. Isabella moves like she was born for this, slipping between shadows, taking down another. The fight is brutal. Close quarters combat, gunfire echoing off the stone walls. Then, a sharp scream of tires outside. More men, reinforcements. They're outnumbered. Ethan reloads, breath ragged. He knows they won't last much longer. He turns, just in time to see the flash of a gun aimed at Isabella. His chest tightens. Then, he moves. A gunshot rings out. A sharp, burning pain tears through his side. He staggers, a choked sound escaping his throat. Isabella spins around just in time to see him collapse to his knees. For a moment, the world stops. Her breath catches. Then, something in her snaps. The woman who spent her life running, hiding, surviving, disappears. And in her place, a fighter is born. She grabs Ethan's gun, moves like a shadow. 2 shots, dead center. The man who shot Ethan falls. The next goes down before he even sees her move. She doesn't hesitate, doesn't stop. Because this isn't just about survival anymore. This is about taking back control. The last man standing realizes too late. She isn't afraid of him. A final shot. He crumples. Silence. Cut to int. Chateau. Moments later, Isabella drops the empty gun, rushes to Ethan's side. His hand presses against the bullet wound, blood seeping through his shirt. Stay with me, she whispers, voice shaking. Ethan lets out a weak chuckle, wincing. You took your time, he mutters. She laughs, despite the tears in her eyes. You're an idiot, she breathes. Then, her hand tightens around his. You didn't have to take that bullet for me. Ethan exhales slowly. Yeah, I did. A long, heavy silence. Then, sirens in the distance. Back up. They aren't alone anymore. She looks down at him, a silent promise in her eyes. She won't run anymore, and neither will he. The air is thick with smoke, the faint smell of gunpowder still lingering. Ethan Blackwood leans against the cold stone wall of the chateau, his hand pressed tightly against the bullet wound in his side. His breath is ragged, shallow, but his mind is still sharp. Isabella Laurent kneels beside him, her hands slick with his blood, but her eyes, focused, unyielding. They survived the ambush. But this isn't over. Not yet. Not until they find out who pulled the strings. A slow, sharp inhale. Then, footsteps echo in the distance. Ethan tenses. Isabella grabs her gun, steadying herself. Then, the voice. Calm, familiar, unforgivable. Well, that was dramatic. Ethan's blood runs cold. His jaw tightens. Because standing at the entrance of the ruined chateau, dressed in an immaculate suit, completely untouched by the chaos, is Nathan Cross, Ethan's right-hand man, his business partner, his closest friend. Nathan steps forward, adjusting his cuffs. You really made a mess, Blackwood. A slow, suffocating silence. Then, Ethan exhales, shaking his head. You son of a bitch. Nathan tilts his head slightly, almost amused. You wound me, truly. Ethan tries to push himself up, ignoring the sharp pain tearing through his side. Isabella grabs his arm, trying to hold him back, but Ethan is done sitting still. His voice is low, dangerous. You were behind this? Nathan sighs, almost bored. Behind is such a strong word. Let's just say, I made sure things went in the right direction. Ethan's fingers twitch toward his gun. Nathan notices, smirks. You always were predictable. A single nod, and suddenly 2 men step out of the shadows behind him, armed, ready. Ethan grits his teeth. Isabella's hand tightens around her gun. Nathan laughs softly. Relax. If I wanted you dead, you'd already be a memory. A slow inhale. Ethan's chest burns, not just from the bullet wound, but from the betrayal. You were my friend, he says, voice rough. Nathan exhales, almost disappointed. And I helped you build an empire, Ethan. But then you married a woman who was destined to burn it down. Isabella's jaw tightens. Nathan's gaze flickers to her. Scarlet. Isabella. Whatever name you're using today, he muses. You really have a way of making men lose everything, don't you? She stays silent, but her grip on the gun, unwavering. Nathan sighs, stepping closer to Ethan. You could have walked away, Blackwood. Ethan laughs, dark and sharp. You really thought I'd sell her out? Nathan shrugs. Would have been the smart play. His eyes flicker, cold, calculating. But we both know you were never as ruthless as you pretended to be. Ethan's pulse pounds in his ears, not from fear, from pure, unfiltered rage. Nathan glances at his watch. Here's how this ends, old friend, he says smoothly. I walk away. You and Isabella disappear. Your empire stays intact, and we never have to see each other again. A long pause. Then, Ethan tilts his head slightly. And what if I say no? Nathan exhales. Then you won't have a company left to save. A slow smirk curls at Ethan's lips. Funny, he mutters, because I was just about to say the same thing to you. Nathan frowns. Then, his phone buzzes. He pulls it out, checks the screen, and for the first time tonight, he looks unsettled. Ethan watches him, the shift in his demeanor, the way his fingers tighten around the phone. Then, Nathan's head snaps up. "You bastard!" Ethan grins, sharp as a blade. "You really should have double-checked your security firewalls, Nathan. Turns out when you're busy staging a hostile takeover, you leave a lot of doors open." Nathan's eyes darken. "What did you do?" Ethan leans forward slightly. "By now, the board has already seen the offshore accounts you've been funneling money into. The shell corporations, the illegal buyouts, the blackmail." Nathan's face hardens. Ethan's grin widens. "By sunrise, you won't just be out of the company, Nathan. You'll be out of options." Nathan's teeth clench. "You think you've won?" Ethan shrugs. "Think? Number I know." A tense silence. Then Nathan exhales, straightens his jacket, and smiles. "Well played, Blackwood," he murmurs. "I almost forgot you were capable of it." Ethan smirks. Nathan steps back. Then he nods once to his men, and just like that, he walks away. The door clicks shut behind him. Ethan finally lets out a slow breath. Isabella watches him. "Are we safe?" she asks softly. Ethan exhales, shaking his head. "No." A pause. Then he looks at her. "But we just won the first battle." A long, heavy silence. Isabella finally nods, and for the first time in years, she knows she's not in this alone anymore. The city sleeps, but tonight, the underworld is wide awake. Ethan Blackwood stands by the floor-to-ceiling window of a high-rise penthouse, his reflection a shadow against the neon-lit skyline. Behind him, Isabella Laurent loads a gun. Their war isn't over. Not yet. Ethan's jaw is tight, his grip firm around his whiskey glass. He watches the clock. 11:47 p.m., right on time. The trap is set. Now, they wait. A long, heavy silence. Then, Ethan finally speaks. "You don't have to do this." Isabella pauses. Then, without looking at him, she smirks. "I was about to say the same thing to you." Ethan lets out a dark chuckle. They were the same, after all. Cut to NT underground parking garage, midnight. The air is thick with tension. A single black SUV pulls into the lot, headlights cutting through the darkness. Inside, Nathan Cross. His face is calm, but his hands tap against his knee. He's uneasy. He should be. Because tonight, he's walking straight into his own downfall. The SUV stops. The back door opens. Nathan steps out, alone, unbothered, overconfident. "All right, Blackwood," he mutters under his breath. "Let's end this." He strides forward, but then he stops. Something is wrong. Too quiet. No guards. No movement. Then he hears it. A click. The unmistakable sound of a safety being switched off. Nathan slowly turns, and there, standing behind him, gun in hand, is Ethan. And beside him, Isabella. Nathan exhales, shaking his head. "You two really don't know when to quit, do you?" Ethan smirks, calm, dangerous. "Oh, we do. We just haven't won yet." Nathan glances between them. His mind is already calculating, searching for a way out. "You think this changes anything?" he says, voice smooth, unaffected. Ethan shrugs. "You tell me." And then, a low beep. Nathan's eyes flicker to his phone screen. The numbers start to drop. His accounts, draining, one by one. Every offshore fund, every secret investment, gone. Nathan's jaw tightens. "You hacked my accounts?" Ethan tilts his head slightly. "No," he corrects. "She did." Nathan turns to Isabella, and for the first time, she smiles. "You always underestimated me," she murmurs. "Big mistake." Nathan lets out a slow breath. Then, he lunges. Gunshot. Nathan staggers back, gripping his shoulder. Ethan lowers his gun, unfazed. That was for your boardroom betrayal. Nathan grits his teeth, pain seeping into his expression. You think this is over? Ethan steps closer. It is for you. Nathan stumbles, barely standing. And then, sirens. Multiple black SUVs flood into the garage. Doors swing open, armed men pour out. But this time, they're not here for Ethan. They're here for Nathan. His face pales. You, Ethan smirks. You really should have checked who was pulling the strings tonight. Nathan tries to run, but it's over. Men grab him, cuff him, drag him toward the car. Ethan watches, silent, unmoved, because this wasn't revenge. This was justice. Nathan locks eyes with him one last time. You'll regret this, Blackwood. Ethan shrugs. Doubt it. Nathan is shoved into the back of the SUV. The doors slam, engines roar, then they're gone. The garage falls silent. Isabella exhales. Her shoulders drop. It's over. Finally. Ethan turns to her. A long, heavy pause. Then, he speaks. Was that revenge? Isabella smirks softly. Felt more like redemption. Ethan chuckles, shaking his head. Yeah, he mutters. Something like that. A long silence. Then, he holds out his hand. She looks at it. Then, she takes it. Fingers interlocked. Two survivors, two warriors, one unstoppable force. Together, the city skyline stretches out before them. Paris glowing under the soft, golden light of dawn. Ethan Blackwood leans against the railing of a secluded rooftop terrace, a fresh whiskey in his hand, the wind cool against his skin. Behind him, Isabella Laurent stands in silence. The battle is over. The betrayals, the war, the bloodshed. Nathan is gone. Her family? No longer hunting her. For the first time in years, she is free. But freedom comes at a cost. And now, she and Ethan are left with the wreckage of what they were. A long, suffocating silence. Then, Ethan exhales, shaking his head. You were never supposed to mean anything to me. His voice is low, unreadable. Isabella's chest tightens, but she doesn't flinch. She forces a smirk. Charming as ever, Blackwood. Ethan turns, his eyes darker now, sharper. You think this is funny? She exhales, stepping closer. No, she murmurs. But if I don't laugh, I might not know what to do. Another pause. Then, Ethan lets out a dry chuckle, shaking his head. You never stopped running, even when I was standing right in front of you. Isabella's throat tightens. And you never stopped chasing me, she whispers. Ethan's jaw clenches. Yeah, he mutters. That was my mistake. The words hit harder than she expected. A beat. Then, she finally speaks the truth. I never stopped loving you. Ethan's breath stills. His hands curl into tight fists. Because this shouldn't be enough. Not after everything. Not after the lies. The betrayal. The danger. But it is. It always was. His voice is lower now. Rough, honest. Neither did I. The words land between them like a slow-burning fire. Isabella inhales sharply. Ethan watches her, waiting, searching, hoping. Then she moves. One step, then another. And suddenly, her hands are on his chest, her breath warm against his skin. You still don't trust me, she whispers. Ethan swallows hard, his hand coming up to tilt her chin up. I don't know if I ever will. A slow, painful exhale. But I'll be damned if I let you walk away again. She laughs softly, shaking her head. You're an idiot, Blackwood. Ethan smirks, pulling her closer. And you love me for it. Isabella doesn't answer. She doesn't need to. Instead, she kisses him. And this time, there's no running, no second guessing, no past standing between them. Just them. A love that was never supposed to happen. A love that survived through war and fire. a love worth fighting for. The Mediterranean sun blazes overhead, casting a golden glow over the private island estate. The waves crash gently against the shore, the sea breeze carrying the scent of salt and wildflowers. Ethan Blackwood stands at the edge of the cliffside terrace, adjusting the cufflinks on his crisp, tailored suit. Behind him, the sound of soft laughter, of clinking glasses, of the world's most powerful figures gathered for an event no one thought would ever happen. Because today, there are no secrets, no betrayals, no hidden agendas, only power and her. Ethan turns, and there, walking toward him framed by golden light, Isabella Laurent. But this time, she's not a runaway, not a woman trying to disappear. She is unstoppable. She is his equal. The sleek, fitted ivory dress hugs her curves, the fabric flowing like water as she moves. She meets his gaze, unshaken, unafraid. Ethan smirks. Changed your mind about running? Isabella tilts her head slightly. I figured if I was going to have a last name again, it might as well be yours. A soft chuckle ripples through the guests. But Ethan doesn't laugh. He just watches her. Because this moment, it's real. A long, heavy silence. Then, the officiant clears his throat. We are gathered here today, not for a contract, not for strategy, but for a choice. A real one. Ethan's lips twitch. Feels suspiciously like a business merger, he murmurs. Isabella grins. Everything is. A chuckle from the crowd. But Ethan, his gaze doesn't waver. His voice drops lower just for her. This time, no lies, no running. Isabella exhales. No more war, no more shadows. A long pause. Then she steps closer, voice softer. Only us. Ethan nods once. Only us. A breath, a heartbeat. And then they say the words. The ones that seal not just their fate, but their empire, their power, their future. I do. The officiant smiles. Then by the power vested in me, I now pronounce you. Isabella doesn't wait. She grabs Ethan by the tie, pulling him into a fierce, possessive kiss. The crowd erupts in cheers. The cameras flash. But Ethan and Isabella, they don't care. Because this time, it's not a game, not a trick, not a battle of dominance. This time, it's forever. The world has changed. The Laurent name is no longer a scandal. The Blackwood Empire is no longer just a business. Together, they have built something unbreakable. Ethan Blackwood stands at the edge of a private helipad, the skyline of New York City stretched out before him. The air is thick with the hum of power, of control, of knowing that everything he once fought for, everything that nearly destroyed him, was worth it. Behind him, the soft click of heels. Isabella Laurent Blackwood steps beside him, a champagne glass in hand, eyes sharp as ever. You've been quiet all night, she murmurs. Ethan smirks, taking the glass from her, taking a slow sip. Just thinking. She raises a brow. That's dangerous. A chuckle. Not when I'm thinking about us. She tilts her head. And what exactly are we, Ethan? He exhales slowly, turning fully to her. The most powerful couple on the planet. A slow, sharp smile spreads across her lips. And yet, she muses, you're still looking at me like you're waiting for me to run. Ethan steps closer. Because part of me still wonders if you will. Her expression softens, but her voice stays steady. I stopped running the second I realized you'd always chase me. A long silence. Then, he smirks. So, what now? Isabella glances toward the glass skyscraper across from them. The finalization of their latest deal. The takeover that secures their legacy. Then, she looks back at him. A slow, confident smirk. Now, we take it all. Ethan lets out a low chuckle, eyes gleaming with something dark. something unstoppable. He wraps an arm around her waist, pulling her in close. Then let's make the world remember our name. Isabella leans in, breath against his lips. They already do. A kiss. Slow. Possessive. A promise. The sound of helicopter blades cutting through the wind. As they step toward the jet, the world at their feet, their empire stretching further than anyone could have ever imagined. They share one final look. This isn't the end. It's just the beginning.